It's Celebrity Showdown.
So we are back with the Celeb Showdown for the Honda Classic this week. I was the first one on this recording, and I was sitting down at my phone, and then Jay came on, and I'm sure he was a little bit worried by the troubled look on my face. And I said to him, I just don't understand why I'm doing so bad. And it's starting to really get to me because I haven't won money in any of these weeks. I finished last out of our whole entire group, which shocks me beyond belief. And I'm not going to give up because I'm a fighter, but I'm hoping that our guest is going to help me out a little bit this week.
Diane, it's like you have a cheat sheet and you're failing the test. Yeah. That's what I can't figure out with you.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I do have some insight that I will give you down the road this week. I'm really switching everything up. But anyway, our guest is from, Golf Magazine and golf.com. He is, a golf writer. He's got his finger on the pulse on literally every single thing that's happening in the world of golf every single week. And you can follow along on Twitter. Dylan Dethier, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Nice pronunciation of my last name. Nobody.
We were having this discussion. We're like, does anyone ever get it right?
No, absolutely not. Okay. I've wondered sometimes. Should I just change it because everyone's always wrong? Am I the one that's wrong? Should I just change my name to fit how people are going to say it? But no. I don't know. Now it's sort of like an insidery club. It's like you have to actually know me to know how to pronounce my last name. So thank you guys for having me.
No, thank you for being here. We're excited to see your picks. Last week we had Colt Knost on, who considers himself to be a little bit of an expert when it comes to picking golf lineups. And he didn't win any money. He beat me, but that doesn't say much. Although Elk, he was so big on Xander Schauffele last week. The other guy that he was really big on in his group was Zach Johnson, who turned out being a little bit of a golden goose for him.
Well, as Dylan will find out here, the trick to this game is to get 4 players that make the cut, and that seems to be your problem, Diane. You'll get a couple, and that's what drags you down. Dylan, is, as you know, if you have a player that misses a cut, you've got to take 8 over for them on the weekend, whether they play in or not. So, Colt Knost went heavy on Xander Schauffele. I think everyone was surprised. He's such a good ball striker, but, he has had a little problem hooking the ball. He did it out in Phoenix. I don't know if that was a problem last week, but I saw him get off to a bad start. But, the Players' Championship is a very tricky event. You can lose the tournament or you can be out of the tournament, as we all see through 16, 17, 18. Anything can happen there. This, Dylan, is another week. I hope you know a lot about this course because we certainly do. This is also a very tough. This is the 3rd week in a row of guys that have got to hit across a ton of water with a ton of wind.
Well, Dylan, how much do you know about PGA National?
I know just enough to have stayed away from playing there myself because it sounds like it's a great test. But it's another place where guys can start counting by twos. And it's funny, you mentioned you have to take 8 over on the weekend. There's going to be guys shooting more than 8 over on the weekend that are actually in the field this week. I think I saw there's a bunch of high winds projected. Let's see. I think with PGA National, when you look at guys to pick, it's random has a negative connotation to it, but it's another week where it's sort of hard to figure out exactly who's going to play well.
Mm-hmm.
I like hearing that already from our celebrity picker. Throw that out there.
Well, the other thing that we've talked about is the field this week. The field is hardly stacked, and Elk had said this, it's a bit of a shame for the Honda with scheduling and that they fall between the Players and the WGC. So when I was going, I've changed my team 3 times already, and I don't think I've finished changing it yet, but it's kind of tricky. I found like the B tier really difficult this week because you've just got some names that you think, do you take the chance? Because they can be a little bit streaky. And I think we're going to find that quite a lot with our picks.
Well, this tournament, I talked about it yesterday on our show, Diane. This is a really good opportunity for guys to win a ton of money and actually get a win. In a couple of years from now, nobody's even going to know what the field was this week. So, when you start, it's pretty easy to look at the A's and who should play well here, who hits the ball really good. And as you handicap golf, you start to realize that there is a pretty big separation between the really good players and the rest of the tournament or the rest of the tour players. But there's always that emerging player that you never thought of that comes up and plays. And that's really the key to any kind of gambling or any kind of picks, because you've got to watch out for the emerging player. So that's what we're going for this week.
Okay, well, the deal is anyone can play along if you just go to the SG Tour Golf Gaming app, and in the public games, look for the Celebrity Showdown. $10 to enter, and the top 3 will win cash. Now, as Elk said, the trick is really getting 4 guys to make the cut. So Dylan is our special guest this week, and I am dying to hear your 4-ball picks. So we're going to go through each tier, and the tiers are split up based on the official World Golf Ranking. So Dylan, tier A, give us your pick and your reasons why.
Okay, this is not going to be any sort of surprise or special tip here, but I'm taking Daniel Berger for my tier A pick. He's a local guy. He knows how to play these conditions. He's played this golf course a bunch of times, but really he's just the best golfer in the field. And I think he's the best golfer in the field by, a wide margin. The tournament definitely still rewards the approach game. Daniel Berger's a pretty money irons player, and he just won't be fazed by, what can be sort of a unique east coast of Florida gale that's supposed to come up this weekend. So I'm sticking with the number 1 guy in the field, in my opinion, Daniel Berger for tier A.
Well, you're right that he's the best striker in the field, and he's from Florida, and he's probably one of the best iron players on the PGA Tour currently. It's a great pick. I must tell you, Dylan, that he went for an MRI yesterday. He had some sort of a rib issue, so I think you might ought to put something in your back pocket just in case he WDs, but he finished 4th last week. I talked about it on the show yesterday. A lot of tour players have rib issues because we're doing a lot of turning. So let's hope Berger can get in there and do that. But yes, he is the best player in the field.
All right. Well, I have been looking up and making sure I was pronouncing Cameron Tringale's name all morning before I eventually switched back to Berger. So if there was some sort of rib issue there, then that would be my number 2 guy.
Tringale in the chair as number 2.
Yeah. Let's keep an eye on Berger. It would not surprise us. We talked about it yesterday if he withdraws, but I think he's going to stay. Hopefully he gets a good report today. There's some pretty decent names here at the top. Sungjae Im was up there. Joaquin Niemann, we have him ranked as the 2nd highest ball striker, which is our top stat this week. And Dylan, if you needed a hint to the 2 pickers that you're going against, Elk is hunkered down clearly in his library, studying every book available. Diane has the statue of a bear over her shoulder. So that should sum up kind of where this has gone so far. So you might want to lean towards Elk's advice. That's a little piece of advice.
The statue behind Diane is actually all of us, and she's about to get swallowed again for the 10th week in a row.
If anyone's going to end up over in the water, it's going to be me. Okay then, so tier A, Daniel Berger, no surprises there whatsoever. As I said, moving down, we've got an eclectic bunch of names anyway in the remaining 3 tiers. And when I was initially picking my team, I found tier B the hardest, and I'm still not set. So I can't wait to hear who you've picked, Dylan.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is one where I started off just making a homer pick, and now I've completely talked myself into it just being a sharp pick too, and a perfect selection. So I've got Keegan Bradley. I grew up in Massachusetts, but I also grew up about half a mile from Vermont. So I kind of have this duality identity that Keegan also has of being from Vermont and Massachusetts. I used to play golf with his uncle. Anyway, I grew up just really tracking Keegan Bradley's career. But he's also been playing really solid golf. He's faded on the weekends the last couple of weeks. He has not been very good on the greens, but he's hitting the ball awesome. And I think he's sort of said the last few years, if he could just be a tour average putter, then he would be right in the mix. So I think if that putter can just get hot for the week, he's having one of the best approach years of his career. So I like Keegan this week.
Well, This may be a slight stumble right out of the big gate here, Dylan. I'm not sure, but when you pick a guy in high winds with a long putter, it's got to be a little wobbly, as you've already stated there. But yeah, Keegan Bradley, he lives, I think, right there at the Bears Club and plays this condition every day. So he knows how to play the golf course from A to B. The whole question with Keegan, it's always the same question, is what's going to happen on the green? How is he going to handle sort of the short range putting, or, you know, big winds with a long putter? It's always a question mark with him. So this is a very risky pick, Jay. Keegan Bradley with the long stick and the big wind.
Well, I'm a fan of risk, so Dylan, I'll give you credit for that. But what I can't give you credit for is following the Diane Knox school of picking, which is picking with your heart. That's always tough when you're picking. I love the fact that you have that common bond with him, that you're from the same part of the country. It's just tough to overlook the numbers. 156 in putting average. And we can talk about it all day long. 14th in ball striking. He's coming in 9th in form, but if you can't make a putt, you're not going to compete. I'm going to say this is a suspect pick.
I would pick Keegan Bradley because he wears such cool shoes. He always has.
There you go. There's the death question.
I'm not picking him this week, by the way. Oh, right.
Diane just gave you an insider clip of how she picks her teams, Dylan. I mean, if a guy is good looking and he wears white pants, boom, she's on Diane's team. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm just gonna say, while we start talking about Tier C, I am not picking my brother because he has failed me so many weeks now. And even though he lost in a playoff the year Russell Henley won, he loves this course. I'm just not picking him this week. So there you go. That's been my downfall maybe for the past couple. And I feel ridden with guilt. But anyway, Dylan, it's your C tier pick that we care about. I hope I haven't talked you out of Russell Knox.
Please pick Russell Knox, Dylan. Please pick Russell Knox.
I'm begging you, please do it.
I was thinking about Russell Knox, but I ended up thinking about it, someone that is going to have the mental toughness to play well in unpredictable conditions, someone that played pretty well through one day last week, and that's going to be Steve Stricker, who I'm hoping got into town a little bit earlier this week than he did at the Players' Championship. He's had a little bit of an up and down record of late, and he's a guy where I think looking at the numbers probably doesn't tell the full story as much as other guys, just because he doesn't play in as many events, and he's getting up there in age. His focus probably waxes and wanes a little bit, but he played so well at Phoenix. It really impressed me, and every time I see him in these tough conditions, I'm always impressed. He always seems to be hanging around there. So I like Steve Stricker to make the weekend, and from Tier C, that seems like that's a pretty good start.
Well, speaking for a senior like me, for Steve Stricker, I will tell you that probably he could be the best putter in the field, even at 52 years old, Ryder Cup captain. I'm sure he's down there for the reason to look at all these players and to start to think about Wisconsin coming up ahead for the Ryder Cup. Yes, you noted how Stricker played well in Phoenix, but that's like playing indoors. This is a different deal. You've got a shot with Stricker because he putts so good and he has a ton of experience. He knows where he should be able to aim his ball. But let's face it, how do you pick anyone in athletics that's over 50 against the guys that are all 20? But I dig your pick. I dig you're risky. I like it.
Well, you have to think about Lee Westwood. I mean, he's creeping up to that 50 mark.
47's a lot younger than 52.
How much younger? How many years younger is 47 than 52?
A good decade feel.
Yeah. A lot. I like this pick. I think credit to you, Dylan. This is one of those events. It's like you're trying to piece together some logic here. Mm-hmm. So here's a guy who has no fear of the conditions whatsoever. I mean, he grew up in Wisconsin. I mean, conditions are nothing to him. And he's played here many times, and he does putt. So on tour, if you're going to make putts, you're going to be available to get to the weekend. I really like this pick. I'll give you a lot of credit for going above the 50 as a 50-year-old. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Makes me feel good.
I guess BJ Singh is going to come up in the D. Is BJ available for the D here?
No, but Julius Boros is. I think he's down here somewhere on my sheet.
Yeah.
Every week I hover over Steve Stricker and Stuart Sink, and I had Stuart Sink as my D player for the players, and he started off pretty strong actually, but damn it, you missed the cut. But no, I love that too, because the two of them, I always think like experience counts for so much, and they just have that kind of like calming demeanor when they're on the greens, which you don't see from everyone in the field.
Certainly not from Keegan Bradley, so I'm hoping that that won't be the case this week.
Right, so the D tier, which will throw up some interesting names, as we've said, but Dylan, who is your D pick?
All right, I've got Bronson Burgoon coming out of the D tier here.
Love this.
He's made 4 cuts in a row, which, is not exactly record-setting. He's not challenging Tiger's 142 or whatever it is anytime soon. But coming out of this D tier, which is probably a little bit weaker than it was last week, I think that he's a pretty solid option. He's also played well at some courses that have some similarity, I think, to the way the Honda might play. Pebble Beach, the way it's set up early in the year, I think has some crossover. He played fairly well at the Puerto Rico Open, another course that's exposed to the winds. So do I think he's going to win this week? Probably not, but I really like his chances to make the weekend.
Okay.
I won't hear anything bad from me about Double B. He's a Secret Golf contributor, a good friend of mine, lives in Houston, has a new baby, and he is probably one of the most gifted athletes we have out on tour. He's so athletic, and he sort of maybe gets a little over-swinging at times, and it costs him. He's very streaky, but when he gets going, Burgoon is so good. And hardly anyone knows this about Burgoon, but he was on the national championship team at A&M. Not that matters, but he got into a playoff and hit it an inch in the playoff. He's got big game talent. We always pull so hard for Bronson Burgoon. He may be my D pick this week just because you brought that to my attention, but he knows how to play the wind, Dylan. He lives in Texas. The whole key at this course is hitting it solid off the club face, because as we all know when we play golf, if you hit the ball in a big wind, it makes it go worse. So Bronson is this is probably a premier D pick right here.
Yeah, I think out of all the picks you've made so far, I love this pick because we love Bronson Burgoon. Plus, I mean, how do you not love that name? It just rolls off the tongue. It's coming in 16th in form. We have him ranked, so he's playing pretty well. And like you said, Al, wind is not going to phase this guy. He's from Texas. He played in Texas. So you start scouring the bottom of the barrel. No offense to any of the guys in the field. It's like, why not go with a young guy who can hit it a mile? And if he gets hot, now all of a sudden, not only is he making the cut, but he's actually up there in maybe a T15, T10 range. That would be great for Burgoon to kind of catapult him to get ready for the spring. So I like your C and D picks.
Me too.
Your A and B picks, I'm not so sure about, but we got to have the A's hit. The A's hit. I can tell you, I followed Colt Knost last week and took Shoffley and licked my wounds all weekend. So
yeah, cost you.
Yeah.
Okay, then, Dylan, your team is now locked in. So you have Daniel Berger, Keegan Bradley, Steve Stricker, and Bronson Burgoon. So you can't change yours. We're still allowed to change our teams up until the last minute. Whether that's a positive or a negative, we'll have to wait and see. Dylan, I want to talk to you about something else, because you've actually caddied on the PGA Tour before as well, and I know you did it was a great experience, and you went on to write about it for Golf Magazine, but what kind of insights did you learn from your time as a caddy?
Wow, that's a good question. So yeah, I caddied for Martin Traynor a couple times, once at the Valspar and once at the Memorial. So two really good golf courses, two really tough golf courses. And I think that just watching guys prep, I think, is the biggest thing. There's so much more to playing well at a tour event than just, showing up and being the best player, that I think, even as a former competitive player myself, it's just a really good reminder. I mean, you get there, you see the way these guys are prepping, grinding, taking notes on the course. There's so much that gets people to contention on Sunday that I think without spending really a week at a PGA Tour event, you just wouldn't understand. I remember Kevin Kisner telling a story a couple of years ago about, inviting one of his friends to caddy for the week. And his buddy basically, after the first day, just was like, I'm good. This is, there's too much work that goes into this. I'm all set. So it was really fun to see things from inside the ropes.
Particularly nowadays, it seems like these cuts are so low now. And I tell my players, some of the guys that I talk to on a weekly basis, they're like, man, I'm playing really good, but I keep missing the cut by one. And it's like, you almost have to play mistake-free for 2 days, like no balls in the water, no 3 putts. I mean, you're looking at, before you walk out there, you're looking at 1 under, 2 under, even. All these cuts seem to be really low. And I went through parts of my career where I was making the cuts very consistently, but then other times I just couldn't get over the hump. So, as you noted there when you caddied it, you almost do have to play mistake-free. And this week's going to be very interesting. Do you sort of, tour players don't like to think about trying to make the cut, but I never thought that was a big deal. I thought, I'm going to make sure I make the cut, and I'm going to play this way a certain way, and this is the type of course that you would do it on because you have to stay away from so much trouble, you have to stay out of the water. I want to get into the weekend and then make a run. So this is a very interesting layout when you overlay an average field onto a very hard course.
And just talking while we're on the subject of caddies, and Lee Westwood is back in the field this week. He has his fiancée Helen's story on the bag, which the TV announcers love to talk about every 5 minutes. But what do you think about, they've taken their off-the-course relationship onto the course, and it seems to be working really well.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the idea that there can be different types of caddies. Sometimes people will ask me how much I think a caddy matters, and I think it matters a lot, but what's interesting is there's so many different ways to be an effective caddy. When you look at Matt Kuchar winning with a fill-in caddy at Mayakoba a couple of years ago, clearly that week, that guy was the perfect caddy for Matt Kuchar, even though he was, not giving him much advice. I was actually there. I followed them around a little bit, and they had a good rapport, but certainly wasn't leaning on him to read putts. So it's like there's this chemistry that you need, but how do you actually define what's going to be successful? That's what's so fascinating about it. And Lee Westwood has clearly found a good combination the last couple of weeks. But I think he's not necessarily leaning on her for reads or for club selections, but maybe in another way, him taking ownership of his game is helping him out. And then having her there certainly to keep him steady. He's clearly having a great time. He has one of the best attitudes I can remember seeing while in contention. So, I really have been enjoying watching them work, even though, the announcers do beat it into the ground.
I think what I see with Westwood is his relationship with his fiancée is he can't snap at her. So if it's a good shot or a bad shot, he's got to put the club back in the bag, and they got to stay cordial as they go down the fairway. And that little bit of volatility right there that happens with a lot of us in caddies is gone with him. So it's always going to be this very even. I think that's really working well for Westwood.
They're not married yet. Let's see how they are in a year or two. Then we'll see how it goes.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thanks.
And the other thing
is they might, television would have you believe they're going to replace Harry and Meghan. They're like royalty all of a sudden. So I'd like to see a different storyline and get focused on the fact that Lee Westwood's having this resurgence over here. And I'd like to see him win. I think he's a very likable guy. And I was pulling hard for him on Sunday. I love the fact that JT won and charged back. But interesting enough, I love to hear the caddy insight from the both of you because you both have experience doing it. But it's such a volatile world, the caddy world. Those guys are hanging on to jobs barely, and this guy's got his fiancée on the bag. I don't know what that says as just a fan. I don't know what that says.
But with them not being married as well, I hope she gets the paycheck to put in her separate account. Because really, if he won over 1.6 for her, you think about the 10% of that, that's a hell of a lot of money.
I think it depends on the prenup. I don't know. We'll have to get a copy of that and see what that says.
Yeah, we don't know if there's a date on the books yet. I don't know if this is like a Dustin Johnson engagement or if it's more of shorter term thing.
Right, Dylan, thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you on. We love your picks and very good explanations why. We'll follow along and we'll see how you get on this week in the game.
Fingers crossed. Thanks for having me, guys. Really had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dylan.
Saturday is considered moving day and you can play along on the SG Tour. It's a one-day stroke play competition where you select a team of 4 players to shoot the lowest scores of the day. Will you make big moves? Download the SG Tour Golf Gaming app on iOS now.